I'll say good morning again. And there may be some people who drift in the keynote, went a little bit late this morning, so they pushed everything back about 5 minutes. And there may be people that are still coming over from the Pinnacle side on the other side of the conference center. But we're going to go ahead and get started now. And I'll say to everyone, thank you for being here and welcome. I'm David Dorfman. And for the first time, I'm going to invite everyone, if you would like, to call me Coach, because my new role as part of Cancer Athletics is what I'm calling a Cancer Coach. So I can share some of what happened with my cancer experience with other patients and survivors, because I was so fortunate, so very fortunate, to have a very positive experience in treatment and survivorship. And that isn't the experience everyone has always had. But it is part of the changing cancer world, and it's an experience that I think is available to many more patients and survivors. So I want to gather more of us together in a team approach so that we can have some of this positive experience. And I'll tell you a little bit more about my particular experience. But what's important today isn't my story. We've all gone through this, so we all have stories. But what I think is so important about being here now is for all of us this weekend, this hour, the next hour, these are teachable moments. These are times when we can change, when we're open to new experiences, to new learning, to making our lives and our experiences better. So as I talk about my diet and exercise and the races and what happened to me, what's important isn't so much the finish line or a race medal, but how we can bring this stuff into our everyday lives, into our own teams, and have better, more positive experiences. And for me and my story, I'll skip some of the diagnosis part and some of that stuff that we shared, because some of what I found unique happened in the middle of chemotherapy. I was a few rounds in, and at my cancer center, Sloan Kettering in New York, they say that they run the cancer center 24/7, 365, and I'll tell you that's not exactly true. Because Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, they closed the place down, and I'm glad they did that, because Christmas 4 years ago, they moved Erica's chemo schedule to put her next to me. And as I had been going there week after week, looking at all of the other patients, suddenly I noticed this woman sitting next to me who looked better than all the other patients. Stronger, more vibrant. Even in a no cell phone kind of area, she was typing away doing her work, and it seemed like that IV was just an appendage. She wasn't bothered by the chemo. She was busy at work, and even though she was working, I thought I have to know her secret, and I bothered her. And I said, how come you look different from everybody else? What are you doing? And she said, I have a team. She told me about her triathlon team. I said, maybe when all this is over, I'll go run the marathon. I was kidding. I had no intention whatsoever of running the marathon. I'd grown up in Boston. Marathon day was a great drinking day. The marathon went right past my dormitories. Marathon morning meant you got to start drinking in the morning, and it was okay. And after the marathon was over, we'd play a Red Sox game. You got to drink all day long. And it's a holiday, Patriots Day, so we had this unique Massachusetts holiday. And that's what the marathon experience was for me. So when I said, maybe this is over, I'll run the marathon, I didn't really mean it. Now that was at this point 13 marathons and 6 triathlons ago. So as it turns out, some of the experience really stuck. But meeting Erica and getting started that first day, she told me when I was kidding about doing the marathon, when it was over, she said, no, not when it's over. She said, start now. Do it right now. And she was so serious about that. Do it now. Do it right now. That I left chemo that afternoon, and instead of going home, I went to the office so I had access to the computer. This is now more than 4 years ago. We didn't have internet at home yet. I found the team's website. I signed up, and that Saturday I came to my first practice. And throughout that first season of triathlon, and also going through chemotherapy and radiation, I'll tell you that I was last and slow. I certainly remember being in Central Park on one of our runs, and I call it a run, but I was kind of shuffling up the hill, and one of our coaches walked over to me. I'm trying to run, but he still can walk over to me. And he yells, "Dorfman, put some effort into it." And I'm saying, "I'm sorry, Coach. I'm just feeling so chemically." Coach and I hadn't really talked before. I hadn't told anyone about cancer. So he's upset. He hears chemically. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, yesterday was a chemo day. And the coaches hear a lot of excuses, but this one had some staying power. Because he began taking a lot of real personal care of me. It helped a lot with my training. And it helped change my focus. Because so much of the time as we go through treatment, and even into survivorship, we become focused on that illness. And we become focused on the patterns of treatment. Even in survivorship, we were talking last night about that scanxiety, how we think about when am I going to be tested next, when am I going to get my results. And I was so lucky with the timing. Because when I signed up for that first triathlon, just like I was kidding when I said I was going to run the marathon, my triathlon was right at the end of my scheduled radiation treatment. So there was a part of me in the back of my head that thought there's no way this is really going to happen. I can sign up with impunity, because I never imagined even getting through radiation, let alone a week or two later lining up for a triathlon. But what it did was it gave me a focus and a calendar and a schedule that was my race schedule or exercise schedule. So it let me stop focusing on when was the end of chemotherapy, when was the start of radiation, when was the end of radiation, when would I get scanned again. And it let me think about what was my race day. When was I going to get my mileage up to getting around the park, 6 miles for Central Park for the first time? And how was I going to learn how to swim a mile? I had to go get myself a bicycle. Doing triathlon, it's a swim, a bike, and a run. At the time, I didn't even have a bicycle. But it gave me a focus that was very different from the medical focus. It gave me something different to talk to my medical team about. They'd say, "How are you feeling?" And I got to tell them slow or fast. I got to say I ran my mile splits in 14:30, which is kind of a walking pace. But I'm still using that race dialogue in discussing it. I get to say I was feeling stiff, both from the chemo, but also because I had a hard workout yesterday. I try to plan my exercise so that when I had a chemo day, I'd get to go and work out in the morning, take a shower, and then get dressed up, and then go to the hospital. And I had my workout in. So I got to think about the chemo not only as bringing me down, but also as part of that recovery time. that kept me from exercising too much. So it really shifted the focus from what are they doing to me? What are they gonna tell me? To what do I have to do myself to keep up with my diet and exercise schedule? And that exercise schedule didn't match the exercise schedule that many of the professional triathletes or even other amateur athletes do. I couldn't do as much. But I did as much as I could. And one of the things that I found was that the fatigue that comes with cancer, the fatigue that comes with chemotherapy and radiation, even the radiation lag and a little bit of it that I can still feel years later, it was hard to fight that fatigue. And studying about it and feeling it, I realized that in some ways, that wasn't the place to fight the battle. Because I could still get stronger and put more energy into my body. I couldn't fight the chemo. But if I exercised anyway, I still got that good bounce back, that good lift that comes from working out. So the chemo feeling or the radiation feeling was still there, but I still had that feeling of feeling sweaty and stronger and happier. So it really felt like it was working, like it was doing something. And I did have a last day of radiation when I was finished treatment, and I'm lucky that I haven't had to go back for treatment since. But that last day of treatment is pretty unceremonious. There isn't a finish line set up. You don't really know exactly what the future is going to be, if it worked or if it didn't work. And the effects are cumulative, so at the end of treatment you're feeling the worst, even though everyone's telling you, we're finished treating you now. But I did have that finish line at the race. So I did have that opportunity to try to show my family, my friends, the people around me, that I was feeling healthy, that I was doing something good. There were people cheering. And I was lucky to do that first race. It was a triathlon called St. Anthony's down in Tampa, St. Pete, Florida. And right on the heels of running that triathlon, I had two wonderful experiences. One is the folks who organized my team in training at Leukemia Lymphoma Society. They asked me, and I still think it was one of the funniest questions. They said, do you just do triathlon? So I'd never done a triathlon before. And I was still wobbly on my feet. I was still about 25 pounds lighter than I am now. Even though I'm back to losing my hair again in the last 4 years, I got a lot back. And now I'm losing it again, but at the time I had much, much less. And I looked very much like a patient at the end of treatment.